Previously on Whimwhim's adventure, our hero started his journey and obeyed the Lich King, ridding the land of a group known as the Scarlet Crusade. He made some bangin' soup and murdered thousands of people and participated in a mosh pit of the ages. With the help of Adrian, Tyrion Fordring was able to weaken the Lich King, causing him to lose control over his Death Knights, which then caused them to rebel and form the Knights of the Evenblade. Adrian, seeking the help of Whimwhim, asked him to take a letter to the King of Stormwind to seek their aid to ensure the group's survival. Whimwhim jumped into a portal that was conveniently placed behind Adrian and began his journey to Stormwind. But on today's episode, our adventure kicks into overdrive. I am brought to new content where I'm stuck smack dab in the middle of a prison with no way of escaping in sight. I later find myself stranded in the middle of the Eastern Kingdoms due to some magic bullfuckery. And I also find out that this game sucks really big dick because of one massive fucking twist. Continue watching, dear viewer, to find out how I overcome all of these hurdles. On part 2 of Whimwhim's adventure. Emerging from the portal, I find myself standing just before the gates of Stormwind, where I start to quake with fear. Already I was having second thoughts about being the one to deliver this letter. After all, I'm a Death Knight, and Death Knights are kind of hated by people that are alive. After mustering up the courage, I moved my feet towards the gate of Stormwind to complete the task at hand. Immediately, I am shunned and disrespected as the guards not only spit on me, but throw various rotten foods at me, making me very stinky and destroying my self-esteem. Nevertheless, I shoulder this burden and pressed onward, reminding myself that I am doing this for the greater good, and my self-esteem honestly couldn't get any lower. As I wander the streets of Stormwind, I'm bombarded by various rotten foods and saliva, triggering my war flashbacks from when I carpet-bombed innocent soldiers. I eventually reach Stormwind Keep and rush inside to deliver the valuable letter to King Anduin himself. Thanks to Tyrion crafting the letter, I am spared from his wrath, and Anduin announces his agreement to form an alliance with the Order of the Evenblade. Having completed my task, I explored Stormwind City to recover from my previous escapades and pick up some quests, where I picked up this quest, the Tides of War. I'm instructed to return to Stormwind Keep and attend a war council. As soon as I enter the room, I'm brought up to speed on the current situation. Basically, the Horde is attempting to make allies of the Zandalari, who I have absolutely no fucking clue who they are, or how this really ties into the Lich King story in any way. Jaina here suggests that we return to her homeland to get the support of her people, the Kul Tiras, so that they can help us fight the oncoming Horde. But apparently due to a story I'm not allowed to know yet, she did some really bad shit and they hate her fucking guts. However, she remains persistent and insists on going anyway. I mess around in Stormwind for a bit doing a small quest chain and then head up to Stormwind Harbor to meet up with Jaina and head out on the quest. Completely ignoring the loading screen and not fully comprehending that I'm in a harbor, I don't notice that I'm being taken to the continent of Kul Tiras. After a long boat ride, we finally arrive in Borealis, where I'm roped into this bitch's problem for some fucking reason. Despite these people having absolutely no clue who I am. Maybe they're anti-furry, I'm not sure. But one fact remains, I'm fucking pissed. A cutscene ensues of Jaina here having mommy issues, and then I wake up in prison. What happened to Jaina? Fuck if I know. Not my problem. I mind my own business. Then I meet Flynn over here, who tells me that we're planning a good old-fashioned jailbreak. He tells me to hit him, which I gladly do, as I'm currently seething with rage for being thrown into prison for absolutely no fucking reason. Our fight causes a guard to come over and investigate, who wastes absolutely no time trying to kill us. Flynn acts, and knocks him out, allowing us to escape. We head to a nearby lever to release the other prisoners and break out of here. It's at this juncture I really begin to sit down and ask the question, what the actual fuck am I doing? I fail to see how any of what I'm doing relates to the Lich King. I'm not even in the Eastern Kingdom anymore. Confused, I contacted my secret informant to find out what the hell I was doing, where it occurred to me that I was currently in the beginning of the Battle for Azeroth DLC. This just wouldn't stand in my book. Contrary to how boring I made it sound, I was actually invested in the Lich King questline. I really wanted to find out what happened next after my heroic feat in Stormwind. I really didn't want to start a new questline, let alone an entire fucking DLC. Then it came to me. I remember I had the ability to teleport to Evenhold. I used the spell and teleported to Salvation, or so I thought. I wandered the area where the portal took me to Stormwind was, but alas, the area was barren. It was at this point I realized I was truly fucked. I concluded that the only way to return to Stormwind to continue the Lich King storyline was to begrudgingly play through this DLC until the opportunity to return presented itself. I returned to the prison and retrieved my gear that I was stripped of and pressed onward. While we were killing the warden, we found some of his special crack cocaine and used it to blow this door wide open so we could continue our breakout. I don't know what was in that crack, but I assure you, if we didn't kill the warden a few moments ago, he definitely would have died if he snorted this shit. We find ourselves in the sewers, which are infested with crocodiles and plague-ridden rats. However, everyone knows that the sewers are always the only way to break out, according to Hollywood, so we pinched our noses and continued forward. While leaving the sewers, we watch this poor guy just get absolutely vored by this thing and promptly leave before we fall victims ourselves. Friend's friend Talia here comes in clutch with an escape boat, and we sail off to freedom. After a long boat ride, we find ourselves back in Borealis Harbor, where I realize that this could be my one chance to leave this godforsaken place. I abandon my saviors and head to the docks above to scout for a ship that will take me back to Stormwind. I'm in luck, as a boat from Stormwind pulls into the harbor moments later. I board the ship and wave this place goodbye as I leave for home, or so I thought. After sitting on a loading screen for a few moments, the area loads up, and I notice that I'm not in a harbor, but in fact a cave, which are definitely two different things. I open my map and discover that I am in Alteric Valley in the Hillsbrad foothills, which is absolutely fucking nowhere near Stormwind. How the pissing shit did I end up in a fucking cave miles away from its intended destination? It's basically on the other side of the fucking continent. How do you fuck up this badly? Imagine if you boarded a plane whose destination was California only to end up in New York City. I was a small town boy thrown into a vast wilderness, scared and fearing for my life. Then inspiration struck. I remembered that for my time in WoW Classic, there was a flight point in the nearby town of South Shore, which was literally just down the road. I immediately headed there only to find out that the entire area was Horde territory and completely off limits. But then I recalled in the next area over, the Arathi Highlands, there was an Alliance camp in the middle that had a flight point. I prayed that it was untouched and began the jog over. God smiled upon me as the area still existed and had a flight point that could take me straight to Stormwind. I threw my money at the flight master and hopped aboard a griffin for the long but welcome flight back to Stormwind. Overjoyed that I was home, I hit the town to rest my feet and get some food and drink in my belly after a long day and headed over to Old Town and entered the Pick and Whistle Tavern to unwind. I talked to the barmaiden, and it was at this point I realized I have 94 fucking gold just sitting in my pocket. I haven't even sold much of anything to anyone. This is all just from playing the game. Keep in mind, I'm more familiar with WoW Classic, and my classic druid character, who's only level 37, I only have 114 gold. And that's after spending countless hours farming for herbs and weapons and armor to sell on the auction house for profit. I felt like Jeff fucking Bezos right now. I decided that after a long day, a hefty glass of dwarven mead was in order. I began to purchase some of the fine mead, and then some more, and then more. And then before I knew it, I had a ton of alcohol, like way too much alcohol, like well over the legal limit alcohol. Mom is scared, help. I chugged that shit and then entered a drunken stupor as I hit the town to have some more fun. After a wild night of fun, I awake to find myself near a pond outside of Stormwind with no recollection of the previous night. But that's not important. I've got work to do. I head back into Stormwind and run some errands before heading out. First things first, I need to get some professions. After doing some research, I find out that professions don't really matter unless you're doing PvP, which I'm not, so yay, I guess. I decided to pick mining and blacksmithing as they seemed to be the most useful at first glance. I ran into a nearby store to pick up some mining equipment, like this pick and this mining sack that I spent 9 gold on. Only to discover that I can't unequip any of my current bags, so I basically just pissed away 7 gold. Whatever, it's fine.
I'm only slightly angry.
As I ran around, I found this kid who lost some balloons and asked me to help him. I agreed and ran around for like 10 minutes and didn't find a single one, where I said fuck this and abandoned the quest. Hope you can find your balloons on your own, kid. I also returned to the Pig and Whistle Tavern to pick up some cooking because I figured that would be handy down the road.
Hey, don't tell anybody about last night, okay? Please?
Seeing as how I was almost level 20, I figured that I was around the level required for dead mines, and boarded a griffin to go to Westfall to do some quests there. I became a detective for a bit, only for the trail to run cold as I didn't get a quest that resolved the quest line, so I really just couldn't give a fuck about it at this point. I was here for dead mines and dead mines alone. I messed around with this clusterfuck of a UI until I found the dungeon finder, which I noticed was lacking dead mines. Or anything that wasn't Battle for Azeroth for some reason. I thought that maybe I had to discover the dungeon first, which, I mean, would make sense. So I ran all the way over to Dead Mines, only for nothing to change in the dungeon finder. Fed up, I took to the Google gods for an explanation, only to discover something I found truly fucking stupid. Apparently, Blizzard's brilliant dev team decided to make it that if you've never reached level 50 on a character, the Dungeon Finder would be locked into Battle for Azeroth, as that DLC is somewhat of a main quest line for the story of the game. If I wanted to do anything dungeon related, I could only do ones from the Battle for Azeroth DLC. So I couldn't do Dead Mines, or Stockades for that matter. If I wanted to do any of the base dungeon games, I was going to have to head back to Kul Tiras, do the entire Battle for Azeroth DLC, reach level 50, then go to an NPC in Stormwind called Chromie to switch timelines or some fucking wizard shit to do past dungeons, which have a level cap by the way, so I'd probably have to make a brand new fucking character to do any of them. The game had me by the balls and my cock twisted into a fine knot. I saw that the only way I was really gonna have fun with this game is if I did the Battle for Azeroth DLC. I returned to Stormwind Harbor and asked around for a boat that would take me back to Kul Tiras, while talking to the guards to double check and ensure that I was actually on the right boat so I wouldn't get teleported into some ogre's fucking colon for some reason. The asshole boat just left and I had to wait for the next boat. After standing around for what seemed like an eternity, the next boat finally came and I hopped aboard and began my journey to Kul Tiras so that I could resume the Battle for Azeroth DLC.